Okay, how's it going, everybody? This is the pre-recorded class about remittances. We're going to go over a little bit of history on remittances as well. So, pretty much, once I get my screen started, you're going to see what I'm talking about. And this is the document that we're going to be going over for the purpose of this class. Okay? Fordham Journal of Corporate and Financial Law, Bailment, Ailment, and analysis of the legal status of ordinary demand deposits in the shadow of the financial crisis of 2008. Okay? This is by Timothy C. Harker. Okay. And just a little bit of background on Timothy C. Harker. He is a Deputy Attorney General with the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General. He prosecutes white-collar crimes. Prior to that, he was an associate at a private equity and hedge fund practice group, Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, LLP. And, there's just a little bit of information. So, going through this, all right, we're at the introduction. Okay? What we need to be understanding about remittances and payment coupons starts from here. Okay, special deposits versus general deposits. All right, so I highlighted specific sections that I want to go over with you guys, explain so you guys can have the comprehension as to what's going on when you're trying to explain to these bankers what you're doing. Okay, so first highlighted section, where a depositor intends to be in the nature of a bailment, the law transforms into a loan. Ordinary people expect a bailor-bailee relationship. The law creates a creditor and a debtor. Okay? Explaining that, to the title deposited, funds pass from the depositor to the bank, and usually only the bank knows it. Upon this legal transformation is built the Leviathan that is the global banking system. Okay? Scrolling down. This article concludes that 1. There is no legal justification for treating any ordinary bank deposit as loans, depositors as creditors, or banks as debtors in the ordinary deposit context. Number 2. The default legal relationship that exists between a depositor and a bank should be that one of a bailor and bailee. A loan arising only by express agreement in accordance with depositor's expectations. 3. The fungible nature of deposits and the fact of commingling pose no legal or practical obstacles for the robust law of bailments and its application to the deposit context. And 4. The classification of ordinary deposits as loans pursuant to which banks acquire title to deposited funds has costly social, economic, and legal consequences. So just to break this down for you guys, so we know what we're talking about here. What they're talking about is the ramifications of treating these deposits that you're doing, and this is usually what they're referring to as Federal Reserve notes, as a bailee-bailor relationship. Now, what that means is in the form of special deposit and trust, okay? Meaning that what you're giving them is supposed to be returned back to you. Okay, they're not supposed to use what you're giving them as some form of investment. Sorry about that. All right. So moving on. We're going to go over to section 1. Relevant terminology and origin of default legal rule. All right. In the ordinary deposit context and in the absence of express agreement to the contrary, title to deposit funds automatically passes from the depositor to the bank in what is typically called a general deposit. So what they're saying here is this. When you put your money in any sort of bank account as a general deposit, you have just given title over to the bank. That means that money is no longer yours. That has been considered a loan to the bank, which is why they can use it for investment purposes. Okay? In the case of general deposits, a bank assumes the legal obligation of a debtor to the depositor in respect of the deposited funds, and undertakes a contractual or legal obligation to return the deposited funds on demand or in the case of time deposits, subject to certain restrictions identified in Part 4 below. prior to the return of the deposited funds. However, the bank, in the general deposit context, may use the available funds for its general business purposes, including lending and investment, subject to the applicable federal and state banking regulations. So, right here, they're explaining to you that this deposited money is going to be used for investment purposes and banking purposes, or business purposes as far as the expenses of the bank goes. So realistically speaking, you're already in the wrong status once you're making a deposit in a general sense, because like they're explaining here, typically when you go to the bank, you're supposed to be doing a special deposit, meaning that you want your money returned and you don't want the bank to sit here, take your money, loan it, and then you just have the credit in your account. This is what the bank's vault is for the bailment purposes. Okay? Let's see. Conversely, if a depositor and a bank agree explicitly to establish a bailment, a special deposit arises where title to the deposited funds remains with the depositor and the bank assumes the legal obligations of a bailee. For example, under New York law, a bailment of money is created when a special or specific bank account is created, title to the funds remains with the account holder, and the funds are separated from other deposits. In the special deposit context, the bank is not permitted to use the deposited funds for its general business purposes. The process by which these ordinary deposits became to be classified as loans instead of bailments is of critical importance. In the 1864 case, Marine Bank versus Fulton, the Supreme Court observed, and I want everybody to read this and reread this as many times as possible because this is very important. It says all deposits made with bankers may be divided into two classes, namely those in which the bank become a bailee of the depositor, the title of the thing deposited remaining with the latter, and that other kind of deposit of money peculiar to the banking business, in which the depositor for his own convenience parts with the title to his money and loans it to the banker, and the latter, in consideration of the loan of the money and the right to make use of it for his own profit, agrees to refund the same amount or any part thereof on demand. All right, so I know that was a lot of kind of like hoopla, but let's break this down a little bit more. So what they're saying is this, two classes of deposits, okay? And this is going to be kind of redundant throughout this whole explanation that I'm doing, all right? But this needs to be understood. Two kind of deposits going on. One of that of a bailor relationship, one of that of a creditor-debtor relationship. Now, in a creditor-debtor relationship, it's always in the aspect of a loan, versus when you have something that's yours already or something that belongs to you, private, okay, and you'd be giving it to the bank, you'd want that instrument returned. You wouldn't want them to sit here and give you, let's say, a copy of it. Okay, you'd want the original back. So this is what they're referencing in the form of a special deposit. There's two things going on. If I give you something for you to hold it, you can't give me something else. Or let's say this, I give you a toy, right? But there's multiple toys out in the world. Well, I still don't expect you, even if there's multiple toys out in the world, to give me a toy other than the one that I gave you, you know? And in the aspect of even with Federal Reserve notes, if you were to deposit Federal Reserve notes into a bank, it should still be in the form of a bailee-bailor relationship. And the way that would work is they would put that money in their vaults. You would get that money back. The way you would verify if that money is the same money is by the serial numbers. That's how you know that they didn't use that money for investment purposes. That's what would be bailment, trust, because I trust that you wouldn't use my money for your banking purposes or investments. Okay? Making sense? All right, let's move forward. Most jurisdictions now use the special deposit / general deposit framework to meet the substantive distinction between a bailment and a loan, respectively. And since the particular terminology used is not crucial to the central thesis, this article will use the term special deposit and bailment interchangeably and the term general deposit and loan interchangeably. All right. Now here's a couple case law quotes. Whether a deposit in the bank is a general or special depends upon the mutual understanding and the intention of the parties at the time such deposit was made. Okay. Courts nationwide eagerly obliged the Second, Ninth, and 10th Circuit site of the Sixth Circuit for the proposition that a deposit made in the ordinary course of business is presumed to be general. So they're letting you know whenever you're doing regular business, they're going to presume it to be general deposits because they're going to work off of the fact that they think that you're giving them a loan unless you stipulate otherwise. Okay, going on. Absent evidence of intent, New York law presumed that deposits are general rather than specific. Under Florida law, a bank becomes the absolute owner of money deposited with it in the absence of any special agreement, importing a different character into the transaction. The relationship between the parties is simply that of a debtor and creditor under South Carolina law. It is an important part of the business of banking to receive deposits, but when they are received, unless there are stipulations to the contrary, they belong to the bank, become part of its general fund, and can be loaned by it as other monies. In Arkansas, the general rule is that where money is deposited with the bank, the law presumes it to be a general deposit until the contrary appears. In Texas, when money is deposited in a bank without any special agreement, the relationship of a debtor and creditor is created between the bank and depositor, and the deposit is general. Almost done. In California, it is unquestionably true that one making a general deposit with the bank in the usual course of business parts with the title to the monies deposited. So when you put it in the bank, it's no longer yours. Okay? You gave it away. You're giving your money away. Further, in order that the legal presumption inhere with practical substance, courts drove the point home. The burden of proof is on the depositor to overcome such presumption by proving that the deposit was a special deposit or a deposit for a specific purpose as distinguished from a general deposit. So what are they telling you here? Again, you have to be the one to break these presumptions. Now, along with reading this, we're going to go over a couple of the ways that you can break these presumptions, but just so you're aware, they're not going to do your work for you. They're not going to do anything for you because they're operating in a sense where you're giving them things. And if you're not giving them things and you need them to act in their fiduciary capacity, that's a completely different story. Okay? So, continuing on. Where there is no written contract, the party asserting a bailment must establish in light of all circumstances that the party agreed to a contract with definite terms. In the Eighth Circuit, a deposit made in the ordinary course of business is presumed to be general, and the burden of proof is upon the depositor to overcome such presumption that the deposit was made upon such terms and conditions as to constitute it a special deposit or a deposit for a specific purpose, as distinguished from a general deposit. Okay, and then the last one. Money deposited in the bank becomes a property of the bank in the sense that the bank may use it as its own. Okay. So, I'm pretty sure that portion is self-explanatory and pretty easy to comprehend in pretty much every single sense. Whenever you're giving money to the bank, like let's look at your checking account. Let's look at your savings account. These are two typical accounts that most people have, okay? When you're putting this money in there, all right, it's no longer yours. And for the people who have the question, well, what about credit cards accounts? What about other accounts that may be associated with your debit card account? Well, we also talk about commingling accounts, and we'll get to that in a moment, okay? So, scrolling down. All right, historical reasons for default legal rule. All right. A special deposit or account is one where the identical money or thing deposited is to be kept safe and returned as deposited. The relationship of a debtor and creditor is not created, but that of a bailor and bailee, title remaining in the bailor, okay? So this is the proper status that you want, okay? It's no problem with being a creditor and debtor in that instance, or obviously you're the creditor and the bank would be the debtor. But if you, how do I say this? In regards to when you're doing special deposits, that's not the relationship that you want because you're not doing a loan. You're not giving them anything. And in the aspect of you receiving a loan, you want a bailment loan, okay? You want a consumer loan. That's what you're actually doing, okay? But I'll talk about that and elaborate on that a little later on in this video. The supposition is, of course, that if a bailment exists, the bailer must have the right to demand that the identical money deposited be returned. By implication, no commingling of the funds can occur, a conclusion that courts have acknowledged. We also prove the principle that where a depositor gives the bank the right to commingle his deposit with other funds owned by the bank, he creates only a general deposit whose funds to the bank is authorized to use and disperse as it sees fits. So let's read that one more time. The supposition is, of course, that if a bailment exists, the bailer must have the right to demand that the identical money deposited be returned. By implication, no commingling of funds can occur, a conclusion that the courts have acknowledged. We also approve the principle that where a depositor gives the bank the right to commingle his deposit with other funds owned by the bank, he creates only a general deposit whose funds, who funds the bank, is authorized to use and disperse as it sees fit. Fucking tongue twister, man. Okay, sorry about that, but again, you need to understand that this property has now been transferred over to somebody else and you no longer have your right to it. And now it's going to give you an example that I want to go over. Because a $6,000 deposit was not bailment, since the specific funds were not to be returned. It was therefore more in the nature of a loan, and that the relationship of a debtor-creditor was created by this transaction. The reasoning is correct as far as it goes. A deposit must be either a bailment or a loan, and it cannot be both. Okay, so hammering down on the fact that you cannot do both at the same time. This would be very akin to how we reference you can't mix public and private. You can't do a special deposit and a general deposit at the same time. You can give them the option to do either one, but you can't do both at the same time. It's not possible. Okay. Going down further, for example, the Third Circuit in Erie Forge versus Still Corp stated that money deposited in banks becomes the property of the bank in the sense that the bank may use it as own. This is consistent with the creditor-debtor relationship pursuant to which title to deposited funds changes hands subject to an explicit or tacit contract in return to return such funds on demand. The mere deposit of money in the bank does not amount to transfer of property. Oops, well, I gotta highlight that section. Okay? This is the exact crux of the issue. The court's second point can't be reconciled with the simultaneous conclusion that a depositor is a creditor and not a bailer, as exemplified by the first point. Either title to the deposit funds remains with the depositor, as in the bailment context, or it passes to the bank in the creditor context. All right, so this is what the argument is consistently, or this is what's going on, or this is why there's such a, how do I say, a headbutt with banks, or even, let's call them financial institutions, right? Because realistically speaking, they want a loan, you want a bailment. You want trust, they want a loan, or they want debt, okay? And that's not necessarily what you want. You would like to use those instruments that you have in the form of trust. So, for example, I will give you this, you will give me exact or equal value to what I am asking for in the form of deposit. Okay, that would be in the form of bailment. Okay, anything else, they're not giving you that because you give it to them in a loan and they can do whatever they want with those loans. Okay, and this battle has been going on consistently. So moving forward, this explains the conclusion that title to deposit funds must pass from depositor to bank. Such reasoning reduces to the following form. So this explains step by step. Initially, depositors have title to their specific deposits, meaning your money. That's your shit. All right. Two, the bankers, then bankers commingling these deposits and masse in the process lose track of title. All right. So when you deposit the money into the bank in the form of a loan, all right, using these references, what happens is they can't keep track of it. Why? Because they gave it to somebody else. They used it for something. They don't. It's no longer in their hands. Why? Because it's not even in the form of bailment. It's an investment, or it's for general business use. So why would they have that money still if you gave it to them for a loan? Okay. Courts concluded that depositors must lose title to their specific deposits with time clause. With time clause is forgotten in the affirming the consequent nature of the above logical structure is resolved. So what they're saying is pretty much this is how it works because you don't know what's going on. Pretty much. And not to say that you don't know what's going on, but as far as the structure of the banking goes and how they're trying to make the relationship as far as the business that you want to do with them, how do I say this? It's, what's the words I'm looking for? It's misleading. Okay, I guess that's just the best way I can put it. It's misleading because you're going in there thinking that you're doing one thing and you're not. Okay, hold on. You know what? I'll even go over this a little bit too. For example, warehouse depositors can also undertake transactions using warehouse receipts that, in many respects, parallel ordinary bank check transactions. Uniform Commercial Code specifically contemplates the existence of such transactions in warehouses and in the warehouse deposit context. A document of title, such as a warehouse receipt, is negotiable if, by its terms, the goods are to be delivered to bearer or to the order of a named person. Similarly, the UCC contemplates equivalent transactions in the banking context. Commercial paper, such as certified or bank check, is a negotiable instrument if, among other things, is payable to bearer or to order. Okay, so just a quick little piece of information that was highlighted in here. All right, scrolling down back to remittances. I want to get a couple of examples in here. But this is a really good read, and I suggest everybody go through it, okay? Because this really explains what the hell is going on, why we even call these things special deposits, what we're doing with them, and how they work, essentially, on the basics. All right? If banks properly classify deposits according to the intentions of their depositors, then each deposit would consist of two explicit components: special deposits and the complementary portion consisting of general deposits. The sum of the amount classified as special deposits plus the sum of the amount classified as general deposits would, by definition, equal 100% of the amounts deposited. Under this system, by classification, a deposit as a general deposit available to the bank for subsequent lending, the purchase of securities, or otherwise, and not as a special deposit to be stored securely as a bailment, the depositor would necessarily understand that such deposit is exposed to possible loss. Okay? So what they're saying is this: if you put your money into a checking account, you should be able to, you should be able to make the assessment that you would potentially lose your money, because you should be aware that you're loaning it to them and there's no guarantee that they're going to do good with their investments. And they're going to, later on in this document here, we're going to go over the reason as to why they have insurance. And the reason why they have insurance is because they do investments with depositors' money. That's what the FDIC is for. Okay. It says, by implication, the depositor's intention with respect to the remainder of the deposit, i.e. the amount classified as special deposit, would be honored. Okay. So scrolling down. You know what? Let me read this section. This is where I'm starting from. All right. The proposition is quite simple. If courts enforce the property rights and contractual rights of the depositors as commonly understood by depositors, uncovered bank runs would be eliminated and there would be no need for deposit insurance. So what they're saying is this: if banks didn't do what they did, there would be no reason for FDIC insurance. If regular deposits or general deposits weren't being done on a regular basis by pretty much being misled, then there'd be no reason for FDIC insurance. If you're depositing all your money in the form of bailment, why would you need insurance if you know the money is there? Okay. Indeed, if banks treated the deposits entrusted to them by their clients in accordance with their clients' intentions as bailments, an awkward conversation would ensue if a bank tried to insure its deposits against embezzlements or conversion by bank officials. Because it would be weird to sit here and you would have to give the depositor a contract. And not regarding, you have to let them know why their money was being insured. It wouldn't make any sense other than you explaining we're using this for purposes that would need to be insured: investments, purchases of securities, business expenses, etc. And this is how you can write. This is how they make it so they can write this off in their books as well. So scrolling down, talk about Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Okay. I don't know why this did this. Okay. This highlighted section right here. This, of course, would mean that depositors and not banks would be the ultimate determiners of the amount of lending and investment undertaken by the society as a whole. To explain to you is this: if you realize the potential power within understanding that you're doing everything ever so slightly backwards, and even if they're not informing you, it's your job to inform yourself as far as the nature of the transaction that you're doing, then realistically speaking, you would be able to live the life that you want to live without really hindrance. They're explaining here that you have unlimited credit and that you can determine how much money is being lent or loaned to you. You determine how much money is being lent to loan to anybody else, because banks can't operate without people depositing money as loans. If general deposits cease to exist, then FDIC insurance would cease to exist. Then a lot of the banking fraud really wouldn't be able to be out there, simply because why would you do X, Y, and Z if you're not committing fraud? Okay. Why would you be doing X, Y, and Z if you were not committing fraud? Okay, here we go. These 3 points suggest that that deposit insurance is not insurance at all, but rather a framework for moral hazard and financial instability through an explicit guarantees against loss, because insured banks can borrow at or below the risk-free rate by issuing insured deposits and then invest the proceeds in risky assets with high expected yields without concern for potential loss. So what they're saying is this, right? They don't give a fuck if they lose your money. Simply being because what they're going to do is, let's say you give them $10. What they're going to take that $10, invest it into a high or a very risky market, all right? If it goes bad, they don't care because they have FDIC insurance. If it does good, they're like, good. Now, give us our cut from the money that we invested. You really don't get shit, and then we're just going to keep doing that. We'll actually take your same $10, reinvest it in the same stock or in the same whatever, get the same amount of money, and then keep doing that over and over and over again. Okay? Deposit insurance creates moral hazard problems that can be mitigated only by regulations. Completely misses the point. Deposit insurance facilitates that moral hazards that is caused by illegal misclassification of ordinary demand deposits, which itself is a form of regulation. In practice, the process of insuring deposits is essential to maintain the illusion that deposits are simultaneously bailments and loans, and thus available for withdrawal by depositors for lending or investment by banks. Without deposit insurance, depositors would ensure that their deposits were legally classified as bailments, not loans, or else would insist upon interest payments to compensate for the risk of loss. Moral hazard would not exist in this context. The systemic financial instability would be somewhat less, and ordinary bank deposits were classified as bailments instead of loans. So, let's see, that section where they talk about interest payments. So if you were to give someone an instrument in the form of bailment, what would have to happen would be, because of no FDIC insurance, they would need to send you, quote unquote, on whatever time period was specified, some sort of payment or some sort of interest coupon that you would receive for that instrument that you gave them. So let's say it's $100, right? And that $100 is secured there in the form of bailment in their vault. Well, because there's no FDIC insurance, you need some sort of, how do I say, what's the word I'm looking for? There we go. They give actually a perfect example. To compensate for the risk of loss, the interest would have to be a lot higher. Okay? So if interest is high, then there's no insurance. All right? If there is insurance, then the interest would probably be a lot lower for situations like this, okay? And this is just talking about the payments that you would receive in the form of bailments, okay? To compensate for the loss. Let's go over this. Specifically assume that there is something fundamentally different between loans or investments made with depositors' explicit consent on the one hand and the loans or investments made without depositors' explicit consent. It is not the purpose of this article to convince the reader, 1, that there is indeed a fundamental difference between a voluntary lending/investing and forced lending/investing, or 2, that artificial credit expansion brought about by default classification of ordinary deposits as loans result in the process that ultimately forces the liquidation of bank investments and loans. However, these propositions, if true, have significant ramifications for the theoretical optimal ability of deposit insurance to perform its intended role. In other words, the legal misclassification of ordinary bank deposits has contributed to the modern banking system in which depositors intend to save a portion of their disposable income without exposure to the risk of loss, as would be the case if they were to invest or lend it. 2. To accomplish this goal, they deposit a portion of their disposable income into savings or checking accounts, not realizing that by doing so they are lending to banks. 3. Banks use the majority of these deposits, i.e. the fraction not required to be maintained as reserves, to make new investments and loans that depositors would not make directly. Deposit insurance renders depositors indifferent to the misclassification of their deposits by appearing to transfer the risk of loss to some other party. Deposit insurance renders banks indifferent to the quality of such loans and investments. As a result, banks must make suboptimal loans and investments that cause economic instability and social turmoil. So what the fuck they're saying is this. How do I say this? Purposely put there to cause economic instability and social turmoil. Because you got to look at it from a different standpoint, or just take a step back and comprehend. Why would a bank do what it does? How do I say this? How do I say this? If you go to the bank and you intend on depositing your money, and you realize that your money was being invested on by the bank, and that pretty much, what's the words that I'm looking for? The bank is pretty much off the hook only on the fact that they can risk your money and it's insured, and it doesn't come back to them pretty much because they gave you back your money. It's already insured. They gave you your $10. This is what causes a turmoil only in the sense that the national debt keeps going up. Now we got people who are sitting here thinking that they're doing bailment. How do I say this? The national debt is going up because people aren't doing bailment transactions. Part of the reason as to why the national debt's going up is because they aren't doing bailment transactions. Okay? Now, when you aren't doing bailment transactions, these people are taking the money, doing whatever they're doing with it, gambling with it. If they lose it, they lose it. It really doesn't matter to them because it's insured. Okay? How do I say this? If things were to change, it would have to be the recognition of the standpoint that the creditor and debtor relationship only exists with loans. Okay? And that's the only place where it can actually exist. And you can't commingle these two things. Bailor, bailee, and creditor and debtor are not the same thing. Let's see. And this is the very end of this. Now, there's a couple other things that I want to go over, but just kind of want to summarize this briefly. All right, so to summarize this briefly, this doesn't explain exactly how to do a remittance process, but this explains the background as far as how remittances are working in the banking system, okay? These are all in the form of special deposits. Now, what I'm going to do is... Oh, wow. I'm so tight. There's so much video that didn't even fucking record, and I hate this. Alright, so I guess for this intended purpose, shit. Alright, well, I'm gonna have to figure out a way. I'm just gonna have to screenshot everything and just add it into the video from where I'm reading from. It's fine. And this document will be uploaded on the Patreon group as well. So, so let me pull this up. Actually, let me show up where I was reading from. So this is where I was reading from. The video, I don't know, it stopped. Where I was reading from, Fordham Journal of Corporate and Financial Law. This is it right here. Timothy C. Harker. And these are all, everything was highlighted, everything that I was reading, pretty much. So, just going through it so you guys can see where I was reading from. This right here. I'm going to make it so it follows along how I'm reading as far as the video goes, so don't worry about that. But just, quick go through. If anybody wants to pause and read it this way, more than welcome to. Okay, that's there. Some things. So yes, this is everything that I was reading. It's a solid 46 pages. Pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so there's that. So, what I wanted to go over next was this. All right. Whew. Okay, so. All right. What? So let's look at this stuff together so we can all see what we're looking at. So ugly. All right. So this is a payment coupon. All right. And this has everything to do with special deposits. All right. But let me go over this first, and then I'll connect everything together, I guess, at the end. Payment coupon. Name, Joe. Loan account number. That's the account number. Total amount due, due date, and it says, please mark all that apply. Enclosed is my payment of dollar amount. Please transfer dollar amount from my Bell Wealth account number, whatever the account number is, and then please set up a reoccurring transfer of X amount from my Bell Wealth account, whatever your account is. Member signature required for transfer. Okay? So this is a payment coupon. Okay? So they're asking for a certain sum of money, $183.42, or at least that's what you think. All right? All right, so here we are, right? Part 204, Reserve Requirements of Depository Institutions, Regulation D. I've gone over this on Instagram a few times in a few videos, but for the purpose of this video, this is a little bit more in depth, breaking things down a lot more. Okay? So, for anybody who wants to find this is under Title 12, Section 204.1, 204.2. Okay? Deposit. And this is the definition that we're going off of right here. I'm going to highlight this. We're going to go over this because we need to start understanding all the little bits and pieces of what applies, what doesn't apply, how it works, how it doesn't work. Any due bill or other liability or undertaking on the part of a depository institution to sell or deliver securities to or purchase securities from the account of any customer, including another depository institution, involving either the receipt of funds by the depository institution, regardless of the use of the proceeds, or a debit to an account of the customer before the securities are delivered. A deposit arises thereafter if, after 3 business days from the date of the issuance of the obligation, the depository institution does not deliver the securities purchased or does not fully collateralize its obligation with securities similar to the securities purchased. A security is similar if it is of the same type and if it is of comparable maturity to that purchased by the customer. Okay, so we need to start breaking these things down step by step by step. So, all right. Here we got the payment coupon, right? So let's look at this. Let's break things down from the beginning, from the application to when you get the payment coupon. So here's a Polk County application for water and sewage or sewage service, okay? So normally you'd fill out this application, right? On this application, you'd either put your driver's license number, you'd put your social security number, they're asking for your driver's license number, ID number, whatever, okay? More often than not, these identities or these IDs that you're using are tied to the social security number if they're not requesting the social security number already, all right? So the placing of the social security number or an instrument that has a social security number tied to it would make this instrument a security. Okay? Does that make sense? With your name on it, your information, like your driver's license number, your social security number, as well as your signature, makes this a monetary instrument. Okay? It's now a security that can be traded upon. Okay? So, from that standpoint, what happens? Well, you give that application to the company. They take that on back end. What did you just give them? A liability or other liability or undertaking on the part of a depository institution to sell or deliver securities to or purchase securities for the account of any customer. So, that's what just happened. You gave them a security to purchase. You gave them a security to sell. You gave them a security to do whatever they needed to do for the purpose of the transaction. But this is always in the form of bailment. You need to be reminded of that. Okay? So, going back to this, right? So you just gave them this application. You put your ID number on there. You put your driver's license number on there. You put your social security number on there. Shit, you might have even used your birth certificate. You use some form of ID so that you can get the service that you are requesting, okay? One of those IDs, more than likely, is tied to a social security number, all right? So in that context, we just said that because it's tied to a social security number, this application has then become a security that's supposed to be purchased, sold, etc. Okay? You take that security, it's an investment now. Okay? We were just talking about general deposits. All right? Now, what happens with that general deposit? They make money off of it. Okay? So when they make money off of it, what do? They send you the payments. Why? Well, this is in essence, this is how do I say this? It's like almost like a little loophole within the FDIC law, because realistically speaking, how it's happening is this. I was just explaining how there's an illusionary line when a customer would go to a bank and then they assume that they're doing a bailment transaction when realistically they're doing a loan transaction. So in that regard, when I was explaining that if you were doing bailments, there would be no need for FDIC insurance because you're supposed to return what I'm giving to you, or unless I stipulate otherwise, equal value for what I did give you on my terms and conditions. But since there is no FDIC insurance and there is nothing to protect me against the potential loss of putting an instrument in the form of bailment with a bank, the way that is worked around is that interest is given on the instrument, okay? And interest is usually given in the form of coupons. So you get coupons for the instrument that you lodge with companies, okay? Which is what your bottom portion statements are. Make sense to everyone? So that's the little loophole in a sense. What I mean by that is that they'll treat it like a loan, but for certain purposes, they'll loop back around to the Bailey-Baylor relationship just to establish, just to establish like the billing statements. But then they'll switch right back as soon as you pay them. You get what I mean? So they'll actually establish two accounts for you, and then they'll swap back and forth to how you deposit your funds. Make sense? Hopefully it does. All right. So let me go back over this stuff. Let me go back to... Hold on, let me share my screen again. So, you put your ID or one of your identifying numbers on these applications, make some securities. Your securities get lodged, get purchased, sold, invested, whatever, right? Then after that, you are issued dividends, payment coupons, royalties, rents, whatever you want to call it. But for you giving them something that they can invest, that is your payment. Your payment is coming in the form of a credit, okay? And to bring this back to what we were looking at previously on the FDIC website, just pull that back up. Okay, right here, 12 CFR section 204.2. Okay, we were reading definition 4, which was referencing any due bill, and under definition 6, it references credit balances. Okay, so let's go back to this, and let me continue this breakdown. So ID or some sort of identifying document is used in conjunction with this security application, okay? So they invest it, they sell it, they buy it from you, whatever they're doing with it, okay? What happens is they send you interest coupons. These interest coupons look like... this. Payment coupons, payment coupons, payment coupons, payment coupons. Okay. If you can see, and I like this example right here, there's no account number on here. There's no routing number on here. Okay? But there is an account number. What banks like to sit here and say is because there's no there's no routing number on there, they don't know where to route the instrument to. Well, that's not necessarily the case either. Simply because all financial institutions don't have to have routing numbers, only because you can identify the account. So, like, for example, on the banking end, they can identify what financial institution it is by looking at the account number associated with the instrument that you're giving. Okay, every instrument doesn't have to be a routed draft. Do you get what I'm saying? Or routed from, a specific financial institution. The company as a whole would give an account number, okay? And then they have a financial division within the company who does the routing and the routing number for the bank that's associated with the account that you have. So to put it like simply, if you have a service like, for example, let me see. I'm just going to use this for the example. So you fill out this application with your identifying information, you sign it, you send it in. 2 accounts are opened, one with the company, one with the bank. The bank sends billing statements to the company sends billing statements to you based on the account that was opened with the bank. Make sense? This is why your account number is on there and it won't show a routing number. So, for example, the routing number that you're looking for would be the routing number for the account that was opened in your name and not in your name with the company, if you get what I mean. They may not open it in your name, only in the sense where they'll keep everything underneath the company's name, or they may open an individual custodial account, but it wouldn't make any sense to do it like that, only because that would involve way too much work. So they'll usually just group everything as a whole and then pay things like that. But that's exactly what's happening with all of your bills. They're opening up accounts in your name as far as the banking goes, and then they're opening up an account with the company itself. Those 2 accounts commingle in the form of one is the deposit, one is, technically speaking, the special deposit or the bailment. So that is what's going on with your bills. That is what's going on with your bills. Let me go back to the payment coupon section. Let me look at another payment coupon. You know what? Utility payment coupon. So this one I was looking at before. Come on. All right. So do you see that top perforated portion where it says, please make check payable to, and then please attach or return this stub with your payment? Okay? So that is the payment coupon right there. Okay? Where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, has all those serial numbers at the bottom. That is the payment coupon. Okay? That is your payment for the obligation, or technically speaking, that is the check that is given to you so that you can credit the obligation. Okay? They take it as a debit, you get it as a credit, boom, zero balanced. Okay? The ways that this can be endorsed. Okay? Now, this is a general way because there's always instructions, not always, but there's usually instructions on how to process these. Okay? So, at the very top, or how should I say this? You know what? Let me do one better. Let me see if I can actually. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can save this. If I can mark it up. Here we go. Let's see. All right, perfect. Okay. So. This is your payment coupon, okay? This is what you get in the mail. This is what you get for your billing statements or most of your bills. Let's see, gas, water, light, what else? Your credit card bills, your car payments, your mortgages, your rental agreements, your lease agreements. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of for where you would get a bill for. They'll send it to you usually in some similar fashion like this. So, ways that I would endorse this coupon. All right. Edit texts. So, stamp duty. It's the first thing I'm going to say. All right. Stamp duty is. Give me 1 moment while I pull up this pretty document. Here we go. Okay. Here's stamp duty. We're going to scroll down. Brief explanation as to what stamp duty is. This is in the Google Drive. Just type in stamp duty at the top in the search bar. Okay, stamp duty is in reference to the contracts, the taxes, and the consideration for these instruments. Okay? So it references the monetary aspect of the stamps that would be put on these instruments. Agreements or contracts, bank checks, drafts, bills of exchange, with their specified amounts. So for example, an agreement or contract, other than those specified in this schedule, any appraisement of value or damage, or for any other purpose, for every sheet of paper upon which either of the same shall be written, 5 cents. Bank check, draft, or order for payment of any sum of money exceeding $20, 2 cents. Bill of exchange, 5 cents. Exceeding $100, 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents, the list goes on. Then it talks about the foreign bills of exchange or letters of credit drawn in but payable out of the United States, $1. And then it has all its appropriate pricings for what you're doing. Okay, certificates. All right. Conveyance, whatever you can think of, it has its stamp duty for it as far as its relevancy to the applicable transaction. Okay? So let me go back to what I was doing before. So stamp duty. Oh, come on. All right, stamp duty. So for this purpose, you can do 2% or, I don't know why I'm in all caps. cents. Come on, I hate this damn thing. So stamp duty 2 cents, 5 cents, and this is in reference to what we just looked at. Depending on the pricing of this, it may be a little bit more, it may be a little bit less. Who knows? I suggest you look at stamp duty when you're doing your documents to reference how much you should put on there. Okay? And for example, instead of putting a whole bunch of stamps on there or having something riddled with stamps, you can also use a money order to accomplish the same thing. Okay? But continuing forward. So next thing on there, aside from the stamp duty, would be writing this out like a check, draft, money order, and spelling out the amount that they are requesting. So edit. Current charges $6,000, total amount balance, due date. So they're asking for $6,330.86. So I would write out 330 and C 86. Jesus Christ. Oh my fuck. What the absolute dog shit fuck. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can put this in a nice spot. I'll even shrink it. Okay. So $6,330 and oh man. So $6,330.86 out of 100 cents. Okay. So I would put that there or somewhere where it would make sense to where I can still write things on here because I have a couple more things I need to put. Okay, next thing on here I would be putting would be by accommodation So I would put on there, bottom right-hand corner usually, by accommodation, Quasimodo without recourse. Okay. And then after that, the last thing that I would do would be on this section. Write my little statement. Accepted for value received. Let's see. Valuable consideration. Tender was instrument as oops. I'm going to explain what I'm writing if you can't see through this. Don't worry. The value accepted for value received for valuable consideration in this instrument towards a complaint amount. To So if anyone's wondering what I have on here already, it's accepted for value for valuable consideration to undo this instrument towards the complete amount of the obligation due. This instrument is intended for special deposit purposes to be exchanged in equal credits paid to bearer/paid to the order. Then I'd put the account number on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, let's say. Let's see. Their account number. Yeah. Let's see. To dishonor this instrument, please return within 3. Oops. Oops. Can't spell receipt. I'm going to blow this up for everyone to see it, don't worry. Actually, let me see if I can change the color on this. Alright, that makes it much better. Oh, this looks like shit. Okay, wait, hold up. Let me see if I can fucking edit. Oh, this is gonna look like shit. Okay. You know what? Here. This is what I'll do. I'll just copy paste it and then I'll put it on a Word doc and then I'll just go over it that way. Come on. Okay. Alright. Word doc. Alright. Accepted for value received for valuable consideration. Tender this instrument towards the complete amount of the obligation due. This instrument is intended for special deposit purposes to be exchanged in equal credits. Paid to the bearer / paid to the order. Account number. To dishonor this instrument, please return within... Oh, wait. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Wasn't recording. Let me redo that one more time for you guys. Accepted for value received for valuable consideration. Tender this instrument towards the complete amount of the obligation due. This instrument is intended for special deposit purposes to be exchanged in equal credits. Paid to the bearer, paid to the order, whoever, account number, whatever your account number is. To dishonor this instrument, please return within 3 business days from the receipt of this instrument by accommodation quasi-modo. And then, stick it on there. So, if anybody notices from all the other examples, from all the other examples that I have, the verbiage is not written the same way, and that's because I generalize it. And what I mean by that is, for me, for example, I come up with different ways of doing the exact same thing, and I don't like to use the same verbiage because I don't like... It's just redundant, and I like to come up with new ways to say the exact same thing and still get the same point across, so I can, I guess I just look at it as trying to be a little bit more versatile, and saying the same thing in a different context can, take you somewhere in the long run. But some of the verbiage that I would include on there on other ones, it's not on here. Like, for example, like something from Levy, it's not on here. Or if you can see, this verbiage is not the exact same verbiage that's on the remittance syllabus. That's because I'm very familiar with the terminology that they use, and you can draft any sort of terminology as long as it expresses the same intent, that you're taking this instrument and that you're pretty much doing a special deposit in the form of bailment for credits, for the obligation. Or if they don't have it in credits, then Federal Reserve notes. However, the equal equivalent to whatever you're giving them is what would be considered a bailment if you can't give me back what I'm asking for. So, okay. Now, let's look at this all together one more time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this back. Oh, okay. Well, it's a lot better now. So, will it let me do a 45-degree angle? Of course it won't. Okay. Oh, come on. All right, whatever. So normally that verbiage that's written in red, I would have done that at a 45-degree angle on that bottom portion of the statement right there. You can either do it that way, you can attach a cover letter, whichever you see fit. I just prefer to write on the instrument that they give me rather than waste paper on something I don't need to really waste paper on. So this is the way it would look. It's really that simple as far as how I do my endorsements in a general sense. Now, I feel like something I may need to go over right now is looking for the instructions. So let's see. Pretty sure I can find some. Let's see if I can find some. Nope. No, let's see. No. Why are they only showing me fucking IRS forms? Let's see. Let's see. there's never something Googleable for what the fuck I need. I hate that. Nothing. Let me see if I can. Alright, here we go. A little bit better. These fucking people, man. They never include any information on Google. Let's see if this is a good one. Nope. Trash. Alright. Okay. So this is the best example I feel like I'm gonna get. Let me see if I can click on this and it'll still show me that same photo. Oh, come on. Alright, fuck them. I'll just use this as the example. Come on. Alright, screw it. That's as far as it's gonna go for me. So what I'm looking at is that left-hand corner right there. I know it looks a little fucking blurry, but we're going to have to make it work for the purpose of what I'm trying to explain right now. So what I mean by generalizing how remittances are worded and how they're processed, there's instructions that are on all of your billing statements more often than not. I mean, they might be very minimal, but they are instructions. So if you see what I'm looking at as far as the Bank of America, it says mail billing inquiries to, and then it has an address for that. It has an address for mailed payments, and then there's an address for that. And then there's a phone number for customer service. Okay. So on billing statements that have things like that, where they want you to mail your payment to a specific address, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Mail it to that specific address. If the instructions on your bill have anything other than that, for example, I'm going to use this example from the Remittance syllabus. Okay, Remittance syllabus. Come on. Load up. Oh, come on. What the fuck? Okay, here we go. Alright. Alright, so this is the Remittance syllabus. Okay. So, for example, this is more detailed instructions. Payments. Your payment must be sent to the payment address shown on your statement. It must be received by 5 p.m. local time. At that address to be credited as of the day it is received. Payments received after 5 p.m. will not be credited to your account until the next day. Payments must also include the remittance coupon from your statement, be made with a single check drawn on a U.S. bank and payable in U.S. dollars, or with a negotiable instrument payable in U.S. dollars and clearable through a U.S. banking system. Include your account number. And then it has a whole bunch of other instructions if you want to continue to read that. But this is what I mean by there's a generalization, because if they're specifying how they want something, then follow those instructions in conjunction with the applicable law of special deposits. Another example, and I don't know why it's not pulling up right now. Here we go. Is this. So making your payments, as you can see, it has very similar verbiage to what we just read at the top. The amount of your payment should be in at least your minimum payment due, payable in U.S. dollars, drawn on or payable through a U.S. financial institution or U.S. branch of a foreign financial institution. You can pay down balances faster by paying more than the minimum due of the total unpaid balance on your account. Okay, and it says if you pay by regular U.S. mail to the payment address shown on the statement, write your account number on your check or money order and include the payment coupon in the envelope. Do not send more than one payment or coupon per envelope. And then it has, do not staple, do not clip, tape, blah, blah, blah. On the bottom section, conditional payments. Any payment, check, or other form of payment that you send us for less than a full balance due that is marked paid in full or contains a similar notation or that you otherwise tender in full satisfaction of a disputed amount must be sent to Card Services, P.O. Box 15049, Wilmington, Delaware, and then it has that address. But as you can see on the instructions, this is why it's important to read it, and this is why you can only generalize, because you can't possibly know where you're supposed to send every single document for every single company. This is why the instructions are there. So normal payments are mailed to Charlotte, North Carolina. Conditional payments are mailed to Wilmington, Delaware. If you're not reading your instructions and you start mailing off payments, it even says it right here. We may refuse to accept any such payment by returning it to you, not cashing it, or destroying it. All other payments that you make should be sent to regular payment address shown on this statement. What are they talking about? They say here, we reserve all of our rights regarding these payments, i.e. if it's determined there is no valid dispute, or if such check is received at any other address, we may accept the check and you still owe any remaining balance. So if you send them a check and you send it to the wrong address, or if you send a payment, or if you send your payment coupon, you send it to the wrong address for the purpose of discharging the obligation, they reserve the right to sit here and disregard it because you're not following the instructions. And if you're not seeing success when you're sending it to the companies as far as them disregarding it, then that's more than likely why. If you're calling them and asking questions as far as, you guys are supposed to take remittances, how do you guys process remittances, you're probably not going to get anywhere with just a regular agent unless you call around for a little while. And even with supervisors sometimes, you may have to do a little bit of an explanation and you may have to show them the applicable law. You can easily just fax these things over to them too. You don't only have to do mailing, but you can fax the information as far as, for example, you should always be making copies of all the payment coupons that you have. So this payment coupon that we cite here and endorse together, what I would do is I'd make a copy of it for my records. When I mail it off, and then, I'm aware that it's been received by them, I would then submit a copy if my account has not been credited by the day that they say on the instructions for the bill. And any other applicable information I will send them either through fax or by mail. Now, I don't do everything by mail. I prefer to do fax sometimes too. But how do I say this? You kind of have to find means of making things faster for yourself, as far as you don't want to sit here and wait an additional 3 to 10 business days so you can get a response from the company, rather than if you can fax it to them, because you have to wait for the mailing for your shit to actually get there, then for them to respond. It makes things just a little bit easier. Even if you fax them, it takes 10 minutes for it to get to them. And then if they have to respond, at least you don't have to wait for the mailing part on your aspect. You get what I mean? So that's who you should be talking to. Let's see, is there a couple more things that I want to go over about remittances? I mean, this is really just a generalization of how it's done. Now, if you're walking into a branch, let's say I'll give a couple pointers as to how you can possibly carry yourself, because I do want to go a lot more in depth into this and start explaining definitions and how to more apply the FDIC code in a form of just a 5-sentence paragraph that you can include with a cover letter, just explaining what's going on and nothing more.
and then that's it. You don't have to do any crazy affidavits. You don't have to do any, 16, 15-page document explaining all the codes violations and all the chart. That's a lot of work. So trying to simplify this as much as possible. Maybe 3-4 codes at all is what you'd probably need to be quoting in that sense. And that's just giving them direction as to how they should be doing things and just making them aware that you know what's going on. Referencing special deposits, referencing that these things would be in the form of bailment, referencing that this is a cash credit equivalent for what you're giving them bailment for. So, for example, like if the bill's not due till the 30th and you got the bill on the 10th, right? You're getting a cash credit equivalent, meaning that they could sell that instrument now. That payment coupon that you gave them, they can sell it. They can invest it. They can do whatever they want, because what you're doing is you're exchanging that instrument that you held in trust for something of equal value. So, for example, if I gave you a bag of Doritos, right, and then you also had a bag of Lay's, right, and then the next day I come back to you and just like, hey, instead of that bag of Doritos, could I have that bag of Lay's and I'll consider it equal? And then the person will say yes. And then he gives me the bag of Lay's and then he keeps my bag of Doritos. Equivalent exchange. Because realistically speaking, he would have had to owe me in that form of bailment that was given to him with the Doritos. Instead of giving me what I asked for back, he gave me something else that I considered equal. Okay? So yes, you can do things like that in the form of bailment, which is why you would be requesting a credit. Or you can request Federal Reserve notes, but again, use them properly. Couple other things, I guess, would be like, for example, let me pull this up. A couple of things I wanted to go over, like this right here. Oops. 17 CFR section 260.11b-6, which references self-liquidating paper. A self-liquidating paper, as used in this section, means any draft, bill of exchange, acceptance, or obligation which is made, drawn, negotiated, or incurred by the obligor for the purpose of financing the purchase, processing, manufacture, shipment, storage, or sale of goods, wares, or merchandise, and which is secured by documents evidencing Title II possession. And were we not just talking about evidencing Title II when we were going over in the very beginning about deposits by depositors in the form of general deposit where you relinquish title, and bailment is the form where you do not relinquish title to the assets that you put into something? But continuing, possession of or a lien upon the goods, wares, or merchandise of the receivables or proceeds arising from the sale of goods, wares, or merchandise previously constituting the security, provided security is received by the trustee simultaneously with the creation of the creditor relationship with the obligor arising from the making, drawing, negotiating, or incurring of the draft, bill of exchange, acceptance, or obligation. So you have self-liquidating paper. This is going all the way back to this application that I was talking about with the, let's see if I can pull it back up, payment coupons, utility payment coupons. Okay, and here we are. So this application right here, okay, was going over is 17 CFR, where it's referencing self-liquidating paper. Okay, the security is received by the trustee simultaneous with the creation of the creditor relationship with the obligor arising from the making, drawing, negotiating, or incurring of the draft, bill of exchange, acceptance, or obligation. Oof. Okay, there's an obligation here. Let's see. In Indicate how you would like your name on the account. Only one name. The new customer account will be set up, and all applicable charges applied to the account. Customer will be required to provide a copy of a state-approved ID with their application. Of course, they want that. A PCU representative will contact the customer with the new account number. Information. The customer will be required to pay charges through check made payable to Polk County Utilities, money order, cash, AMSCOT, or can be paid via the customer using our online payment system. Credit card payments must be handled by the customer only. Okay, then it talks about Polk Utility does not require a deposit to establish an account. Deposit is non-negotiable or transfer between individuals. This application, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then they also talk about blanket master, deposit master account number. Okay, so, I mean, all the verbiage is here if you just look at the applications as such. These are banking instruments, because what else would a company do with these other than keep them on file? This is a waste of space and a waste of computer space if you just look at these instruments as that. And they really don't serve a purpose other than quote-unquote identifying you, which is what people assume. But why, how do I say this? This is a very mediocre way of storing information on people, simply because computer systems can be hacked. And a paper format is a lot more, volatile in keeping records alive, realistically speaking. But, to each their own, I guess. So, okay, let's see what else can I go over with you guys? Oh, well, this is just a little bit of history, I guess. So, the way that I'm going to format this for the next one is because this is going to technically be my first pre-recorded class. The other ones that I tried to do were, in my opinion, garbage, so they were scrapped. Very critical of my work. So, this is my first time doing this. For those who watch this, I would appreciate some constructive criticism on how this should be better formatted, because slightly all over the place. I'm trying to get the information out there in a sense for beginners, and I need, information from you guys on how you'd like it structured to learn. And for example, this is how I'll be doing my pre-recorded classes, where I will just talk, record, screen record. I can also answer questions in my screen recordings or in my own, doing things like this. So I'll take maybe 10, 15 questions or something like that, and then what I'll do is I'll answer them in the very beginning of the class or of this, and then I'll move forward with what I want to discuss. Okay, so I want to say thank you for all who are watching. I appreciate your time, and well, let me give you a little synopsis of what I want to get into. There's a lot of stuff that I want to get into, but to further explain as far as the deposit aspect goes for the remittances and what's happening, what's going on, as far as the Bailey-Baylor relationship, creditor-debtor relationship this is all in reference to, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Farming Act. The Farm Credit Bank. So what had happened was, let me see if I can pull it up. Do I still have the tab open? I don't think I do. Is it? No. No. This. Oh. Okay, yes, this is it. So I want to get into talking about this a little bit. More than likely, I'm going to do this on the next one of these, though. But pretty much a level of understanding needs to come here, as well as far as knowing what's going on with the banking structure and why things are the way they are. And it's why can't I move forward? Or why are things being treated like this? Or why is it if I quote them a code or show them the applicable law, they're still operating outside of the scope of the law? Well, there's many reasons. One, because they've been acting outside the scope of the law for so long, are you, how do I say this? If you haven't corrected somebody for so long, do you really think that the correction will do good once they're in the mindset like I can continue to do this because nobody's been correcting me, and any corrected information seems like you don't know what you're talking about, but nobody's corrected me this entire time, so I'm going to continue to do what I do. But regardless of that, this is Public Law 100-233. Okay, this is pretty much about the farmers credit system. And what happened was that the banks merged with the agricultural aspect of things. So there was a bank merger from farmer banks and regular commercial banks, and they pretty much just became under one subcategory of banks. So all banks operate as farmers banks. And when you're taking out these loans, for example, like they treat you as a farmer in the sense where you're getting a federally subsidized loan no matter what aspect you're looking of it as. And this is partially why the security interest in a lot of the things that you think you're doing in consumer transaction for is pledged over to the government because you're a farmer. And the farmer, technically speaking, doesn't have any rights over the agricultural lands that are being occupied. So that's just something that, will be discussed at a later date. Don't want to get too deep into history yet. But like I said, I will be talking about, more information like this on the next pre-recorded class. Like I said, thank you for listening. I didn't want to get too much into consumer laws or like Title 15 or anything like that as far as the violations go, because realistically speaking, the way that these, how do I say this? The way that these should be done is giving an informative notice before you do any of that. Okay, so for example, I would present the payment coupon, and any, applicable information that they need to more than likely do whatever they need to do because they probably haven't heard of it, or that's not the person I should be speaking to about it, but they need to reach out to somebody else. And I'm only giving them that information just because I'm doing my due diligence by informing somebody who may be potentially ignorant. So in that regard, I do that little informational standpoint. If there's anything that they don't understand, they are more than willing to contact me so I can further explain. At that point, if there's anything as far as they say, we can't do this, or I'm not going to do it, or if they sit here and say that doesn't apply, blah, 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 I'll say, okay, thank you very much for the information. I appreciate that. There's no point in arguing over the phone unless I was, for example, gathering information. So I'd say something like, this call is being recorded for quality and assurance purposes, before the call, just so, I can use that information for what I needed it for. But I'm not going to, it depends on what route I'm going to take, because thank you very much. You said what you said. Have a nice day. And then now I need to write a second letter to their superior, registered agent, CFO, CEO, just copy of everything that I already did. One more letter. Hey, CFO, CEO, this is the applicable law. There's a little bit of a misunderstanding. I feel like you need to be advised of this. Okay. After that, and I do this through fax. Sometimes I do it through mail, but more often than not, I'll do this through fax because it's a lot easier and I don't have to go anywhere. And I can send this and they know that they got it because it'll be marked delivered. And then you can call the office and say, hey, did you get my fax? And they say, yeah, it's on your file. So that's why it's a little bit, sometimes I'll do mailing, sometimes I'll do faxing. It's really up to you, okay? If you want more solidified methods as far as like, you want your return receipt, then it's okay to go through those traditional methods, but it really just depends on how quickly you want the situation dealt with. Okay. And also their legal department is one other person I notify, because these people aren't lawyers. They can't give legal advice, and you may be potentially able to implicate a couple of agents in giving legal advice, but realistically speaking, that's a side note compared to what's going on with what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. What you want is your remittance process. The employees that are violating your rights come secondary, because you still have a goal to accomplish. You still need to get done what you need done. So get that done first before you worry about all the employees who did X, Y, and Z to help hinder the process of you doing what you need done. You can mention that to the legal team once they get the understanding as to what the hell you're trying to do, and you show them the applicable law that applies. If people choose to be ignorant, because there are people who are aware, there are people who are not. You can't base every experience off of what you see for someone else. You have to make that experience yours, in a sense, in the same way like you see me do like phone calls to banks and like agents and things like that, and it seems like I'm able to pull answers that other people aren't able to pull. You don't see the background. You don't see how many times I have to call, how many agents I have to go through, how many times I have to get transferred just to get that one answer. You get what I'm saying? It's being persistent and knowing that you're not going to tell me no, and I know this is how things work. Like, you may not know how things work, but this is how things work, and you need to start following suit, otherwise there will be repercussions. For example, after 3 letters, hypothetical purposes, if you notified, I, how do I say this? Go straight in. If you were going straight in to try to deposit that, supervisor, if the supervisor doesn't know, or a manager, whoever the highest person in that branch is, the executive/corporate office, legal team, CFO. Everybody has an opportunity to correct what's going on and to understand what's going on, to do the research that they need to do to make sure that they're not outside of the scope of the law. And then at that point, if they're still going to try to violate the law, you already have your suit right there. Simply because their response needs to be in written correspondence. Okay, so yeah, they can call you, but I would request that, the information be through written correspondence, unless on the phone call, like I said before, you say this call is for quality and assurance purposes. Just little, informational tidbits like that. It'll make your job, not your job, but what you're doing a lot easier when you don't feel like you have to do 1,010 things at once. An entire administrative process to pay one bill doesn't really make any sense. I wouldn't do something like that. I would draft, like I said, like a little paragraph explaining what I'm doing. I'd probably put maybe 3-4 codes at best, letting them know, hey, this is where it's at under federal law. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'm trying to act in good faith. That's really it. And I would include any violation, or maybe 2 or 3 violations on there, if I really wanted to, and let them know, like, I know what I'm talking about. And, like, if you try to violate what I'm trying to do, well, here's the violation for that violation. You get what I mean? So that's really it as far as processing a remittance. Again, the jumping through hoops part is what people don't see. The calling on the phone, the having to speak to, 10, 15 people just to be able to do one thing. It's doable. It's just that you need to be able to pursue it as if you want to do it. And you need to be able to explain what you're doing so that they're able to help you, because a lot of people are not aware of this information. Like, you could probably even ask a banker, and a banker wouldn't even realize that they're a debtor in the depositor transaction for, like, most people. They don't know that if you deposit, your money into a bank, that it's considered a loan to the bank. You can ask a banker that, and they might not even be aware of that information. So you can't really judge someone based on the position that they're in to know this information, when if I want to keep you willfully ignorant to deal with people who, are trying to get to us, it's like an interface. Like, put a wall up. That way you can't get to any of the shit that you want to get to. That's what they'll do with these agents. They'll make them willfully ignorant in their profession. Not willfully ignorant, but purposely ignorant in their profession by giving them only policies that apply in a very minuscule sense and in no outside scope information. So this is why I say supervisors and above, managers and above, don't waste your time trying to argue with people who literally, more than likely, don't know and who aren't aware. Okay? So any other information on remittance? No, that's it for right now. I'm going to take this class with not a grain of salt, but this is my first time doing this like this. The next one, I feel like I might want to use the whiteboard instead of this one. So, just trying to switch it up and get like a handle of like a really solidified way of doing this. So, again, like I said, thank you for listening and joining. I appreciate your time, and I hope everyone has a great day.